Now, we just finished an abbreviated Thursday session. Market closed early ahead of Independence Day. Shortly after, and rallied on anticipation of this bill passing, the big, beautiful bill. Shortly ago, just a little while ago, the House ended up passing Trump's big, beautiful bill. As I talked about in yesterday's update, I think this could be a sell the news event. Buy the rumor, sell the news. Trump's going to sign it. You'll see the stock market initially pop on it when it reopens, or even futures and the stock market come Monday morning, but then we could begin to sell off. Divergences, the triple divergences in the daily time frame, the bearish divergences on the hourly chart. Why could this be a sell the news event? Because we could see yields spike higher. The bond market could have a negative reaction to this on concerns of government debt levels. So could this be the catalyst or part of the catalyst, the excuse for the pullback? Maybe. If we start to see yields spike higher, with the bond market being concerned about growing government debt levels, and it could be catalyst or part of the catalyst. But very soon you're going to see profit taking, you're going to see short sellers ganging up on the market, you're going to get some kind of pullback. Could this be the catalyst? Could be, maybe. Market has shrugged off every other catalyst, kept plowing on forward. I'm telling you, at some point we're going to get a pullback. Could this be the catalyst? Maybe. And we had the 10-year Treasury note yield getting back above the 200-period moving average during the Thursday session, breaking out of a bullish falling wedge. So again, as I talked about, I think we're going to end up seeing yields spike, trees drop, the bonds drop. Initially, we can back test this move, and we might pop a little bit higher. We have that 9 count on the S&P coming on Monday that could complete 13-9 sequence count reversal signal. Back test here, go a little higher on Monday, bill passed, and then end up selling off with it if yields turn right back up, which I think is very, very likely. Get the breakout here on Thursday. Please support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like to chart, you like the indicators, please let me know that by supporting the channel today. Follow the link below to take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. Take a moment and partner with me. I would really, really appreciate that. Any sponsors, just a direct relationship with you. So thank you for your consideration and supporting the channel today. Now, Monday, we have potential 9 counts that will complete on the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. They could mark a turning point. We've got divergences forming everywhere on the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. My signals are still bullish. The S&P trend is still bullish. But you can see even we are in a risk-on environment with our risk model here. It also diverging with the S&P 500. This is what happened at the December top and at the February top. S&P is making new highs. We're not seeing new lows with risk on. Divergence will likely, along with boatload of other indicators that are forming divergences, it will likely give the S&P a reversal for a larger pullback. As I said, at some point, the rally that I predicted at the bottom is going to come to an end. Signals are still bullish. Do expect a top is about to develop for a larger pullback. I've been predicting. I think it's going to end up playing out that way. I've said we could see the top and reversal begin any day now. We have 9 counts that are going to complete on Monday. We'll be watching those. Watch the video all the way through. If you want to be in the know, be ready for what's coming. Watch the video all the way through. Show you what I'm watching. But remember, do see a peak. We got to see my signals. We have to see my signals. Validate that by turning bearish. Have been consistently bullish through the entire advance. Now look, we had a rally today think we're going to wrap up wave one and end up getting wave two in an ABC move. I think we're completing a 5-leg push higher. As I've said, we gapped higher. We're blowing past this trend line. I told you again, down at the bottom, when we were bottom, we were going to rally up and make new highs. As we were rallying, I told you this trend line is where I think we're headed. I think we're headed to that trend line, and we're doing what NASDAQ did. We're overthrowing it a little bit. Become now overbought with the RSI. It's no longer forming a divergence. We had a divergence give us this pullback, but now we're moving to a new extreme. Now the extreme may mark a top or a divergence. Are already getting divergences developing on the MACD and the awesome oscillator. We didn't have a bullish divergence at the bottom. We just moved to an extreme. So it may very well could be the same. But I do think that the rally is likely going to come to a conclusion. You'll get a top and a pullback. I talked about it possibly being this week if we could see the divergence is complete. They didn't pass the big beautiful bill until after the stock market closed on Thursday. I think it's more likely we get a rally early on Monday there and start selling off shortly after that. That could be the catalyst if we start seeing a spike on concerns about growing government debt levels. What could be the catalyst? Be watching. You also have the trade tensions now with Japan, between the U.S. and Japan. Be another catalyst, something to be watching. Divergences, a stochastic multiple point divergence. We've got it on the MACD. We've got it on the awesome oscillator while the RSI moves to a new extreme. See a peak and a short-term top and get a pullback, and I think we're eventually going to come back and fill this gap and likely move towards a cloud. You could see a more mild Fibonacci retracement. End up getting the right shoulders. I think we're going to, and pulling back towards the 200 now, just under the 200 period. And this is our Fibonacci retracements from this high. Again, Monday we can go a little bit higher. We're going to get a possible 9 count on Monday. We could sell off again. Yields have broken out, and they end up back testing. We could see the S&P still go higher, but then the 10-year yield breaking out of a bullish falling wedge, breakout, back test. Then we could see a sell-off. We start seeing it go higher and see a pullback with the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. I end up dropping back below the 200 period moving average. Go higher, the Fibonacci retracement levels will change a little bit, but currently right now under that 200 period is our 38.2 Fibonacci. You get this gap fill down here that I'm looking at, and then you have this 50% retracement around 5,500. I think we're probably going to see something like a 38.2 Fibonacci or 50% retracement for the S&P 500. I don't think you're going to get 1.8 Fib or 78.6 Fibonacci retracement. It'll be more of a mild retracement at one of these other levels here. I think it is coming. The S&P completed a 13 countdown sell signal on the Thursday session. Again, short trading this week with Independence Day, and then an abbreviated session on Thursday. Seeing the new highs on very, very light volume, that's not very convincing. You're going to end up seeing type of top develop, short-term top, and a pullback give us, or a reversal that will give us a pullback, a larger pullback than what we've seen so far. We've had these smaller pullbacks. I told you my last update, we were going to likely complete the 13 count today, and then you have also an 8 bar that we would be getting today. Do you see the count above is the 8 bar there? The count below is a 13 count. This was bar 12 yesterday. We now have the 13 count with a completed reversal signal. This last 13.9 gave us this smaller pullback. This 9 gave us this pullback. 13 gave us the higher low and the bottom. I thought a 13 count or a double sequence count sell signal, the 13 followed by the 9, that's what I call it, double sequence count sell signal. I told you I thought the 13 followed by the 9, the 13 end up giving us the bigger pullback, a reversal and followed by a bigger pullback rather than one of these smaller ones. Do for it. Showing price exhaustion. So we got the 13 count completing today here on Thursday as I'm making the video. We got a stronger number for the jobs report. Hopes in anticipation that the big beautiful bill would be passed. It did pass the House after the market closed, and they're sending it to the president to sign on Independence Day on July 4th. Initially, we could see, I talked about two scenarios. I told you that if we pass it during the session, we could see a rally on that, but then when Trump signs it, we could see a sell-off, possibly Monday. The scenario I talked about is that initially Trump signs it, we get this rally on next week, then we sell off. If that ends up being the catalyst, one of the catalysts for the sell-offs, and I think it could be, we see the yields begin to spike higher. Concerns about growing government debt levels. I think that is a strong possibility. If that ends up being the catalyst. Monday, we're going to get a 9 count if we are above the bar from 4 bars ago. We have to be above 1, 2, 3, 4. We got to be above this bar by the close on Monday. The bar doesn't have to be the high of the count, but it very well could be. What if we go up and we get a doji or something? Spinning top, shooting star topping tail. You open up and you get a rally and it goes higher, but then you give it back, and you get this topping tail shooting star candlestick. We could see any of those kind of candlesticks develop next week. But again, we could initially rally, see the 10-year yield try to back test, and that could give us a doji or a shooting star or a spinning top or something like that. Could complete our 9 count. Now the 13.9, maybe you go a little higher, and then you start to turn. Times you get those counts and you turn immediately. Talked about how your phone, when it's not been charged, you can get it. It's got just a little bit of life left in it. Other times, you forgot to charge it, you pick it up, and it dies on you immediately. Will this be? So again, these 13 and 9 counts, I'm telling you, prices are getting very tired, and we're either going to get a pullback like we did over here or a reversal. We're going to get a reversal for that bigger pullback. I think we'll come back and test the 200 period moving average. The 50 is going to continue to rise back up. I think we'll eventually move to that 200 and drop back below it and likely fill a gap. Over here, when we gapped above that 200 period moving average, I think that gap is eventually going to get filled, going back into the 5,600 range. We'll see if we get that 9 count come Monday. We'll see what kind of candlestick we get on Monday. But again, I am looking for a top here. I'm looking for a pullback. I think we're likely wrapping up wave 1 if we get that 9 count. But we did get the 13 here to complete the week. Why is that 13 count and 9 count? The 13 count we got on Thursday and the 9 count that we're probably going to get on Monday. Why is that so important? Because we finished the 9 count in the weekly time frame last week. Remember when we got that 13.9 in the daily time frame previously, I told you that could just be a pullback. It could be canceled out if this count completes. I talked about that at great length and detail. This count did complete, and we're at new highs. So again, it was the 9 count here that gave us the bottom. The 8 bar was the low of the count. Sometimes you get the 9 count, you go a little higher. Other times you turn immediately, we're going a little higher. NASDAQ's going higher. After getting its 9 count, so is NVIDIA. Likely still going to get the sell-off again, likely overthrowing these 9 count bars that we had in the weekly time frame. But it's showing you, hey, price exhaustion is taking place. At some point we are going to get a pullback. And again, my signals bullish through the advance, bottoming at horizontal support. NASDAQ and S&P played out very nicely, but at some point we're going to get a pullback. My guess is that's going to be the wave 2 and the right shoulder for that massive inverse head and shoulders is forming. We're going a little bit higher here. I'll be watching that 13.9 in the daily time frame because now you're getting price exhaustion in the weekly and in the daily time frame. We've just completed the 13 count, maybe a 9 by Monday. You're completing the price exhaustion in the daily and the weekly time frame simultaneously. Will likely give us a reversal for that larger pullback. Now the S&P was up 1.72%. It's playing catch up to the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ was up about 1.5% for the week, but the S&P up 106 points. So again, we're hitting the levels that I talked about. We're making the new highs, and again, we're completing these counts. So I would expect a pullback up and a pullback in the very near future. NASDAQ 100 was up, represented here by QQQ. The QQQ ETF was up 1.48%. Again, we had the 9 count, went higher. That wide range bar got a narrow range bar here. Again, you could see a red bar by the end of the week and have an evening star reversal. This is smaller than the S&P's bar that we got for the week, but same thing. You've got the 9 count for the bottom over here. We got a 9 count here. We're going past it, overthrowing it. We're likely going to top. Now, if we don't get an evening star, again, you may just go a little bit higher and then see some kind of reversal bar at the end of the week. If we do get the reversal next week, remember, my signals are still bullish, but I do think that we're going to top in this area. The highs from the previous peaks could be pointing to the next high. We've overthrown it on the NASDAQ a little bit. We're doing that on the S&P. Forget, we've had that 9 count on NVIDIA. This week on NVIDIA, we got a candle of indecision, a doji-looking candlestick. We could get an evening star reversal possible. We're just underneath that trend line, though, in the daily time frame that I've talked about. I showed you that chart. But these other 9 counts, again, they played out. This one over here, this one is likely going to be no different. We're likely going to see it play out. I think NVIDIA is going to come back to try to fill this gap right here. NASDAQ and S&P and here are all going towards their 50-period moving averages in the weekly time frame, dropping below the 50-week, dropping below the 200 in the daily. We just had that 9 count last week with the semiconductors. Got a possible hanging man here with the semiconductors this week. So again, I do expect we're going to see some kind of sell-off. Could it be spike with yields on concerns about growing government debt levels? Possibly. Just going back to the NASDAQ, again, here is the QQQ weekly. Let's look at the daily, show you what I'm looking for next week. I talked about these patterns earlier in the week, and I told you we might see a peak this week. It might drag out into next week because we had these counts, and the divergences in the daily time frame still may not be done. You got a good shot at these 9 counts completing. You're going to get the 13 on the S&P followed by the 9 on Monday. On the NASDAQ, you're going to get bar 9. That will complete a 9-13-9 reversal pattern. So again, this is QQQ representing the NASDAQ 100. Again, then I think you're going to come down to test these 200 periods and try to fill these gaps when we gapped above the 200 period moving averages. Aware of that we have these 9 counts. Now, these 9 counts on the S&P and NASDAQ, it is on the NASDAQ daily chart. Here it is once again on the S&P daily chart. Again, we completed the 13. You're going to get potentially a 9 count on the S&P on Monday. You're going to get a 9 count on the NASDAQ on Monday. Counts could get a turn immediately, or we could go a little higher. Turn. I think you got a good shot, though, with the 9 count that we had last week on the S&P complete in the weekly time frame, and right before that on the NASDAQ, I think you got a really good shot of these counts producing a reversal to give us a bigger pullback rather than just a smaller pullback like the last one did back over here, or the 9 count over here. I think it could produce a reversal. I was warning you, we're going to get these 9 counts. So maybe we initially, I talked about in Wednesday's video, maybe we do rally. Tax cuts, but then we see the spike in the yields on concerns about growing government debt levels, and we end up seeing kind of self. Or maybe it's another catalyst, combination of catalysts. Whatever the case may be, whatever the catalyst is showing price exhaustion, and I think you're going to get a reversal for a larger pullback rather than a smaller pullback as we've seen. Now this is a Dow daily chart. We got the 9 count yesterday. We had a candle of indecision. But again, showing price exhaustion. We still don't have the 50 above the 200 period moving average. The Dow still hasn't made a new high, but we have this 9 count. Other counts have been associated with pullbacks or reversals. Again, I think you got a pretty good shot of it with the S&P and NASDAQ getting their 9 counts come Monday. We already got it this week on the Dow and on the Russell. Here it is on the Russell 2000. We have a 9 count just above our 200 period moving average. Again, the 50 is still not above the 200 period, completing Wednesday's close a 9-13-9 reversal pattern. Some of these other counts have marked counter trends or reversals. You've got a good shot. We're going to pull back. I do think we're in a large ABC correction with the Russell. That's why I think the S&P after this pullback will still go make new highs. But got the 9 count this week on the Russell here on the Dow. a 13 on the S&P, and possibly going to complete a 9 count on Monday, and then a 9 count possibly completing on the NASDAQ and QQQ there on Monday as well, all in the daily time frame. Getting these 9 counts or the 13.9 the S&P, and I think it's going to end up giving us a pullback, whether immediately or we go a little higher. I think it's going to happen. Now, I told you I might consider closing my long positions and going short this week. On Wednesday, I told you I was watching these counts with these 9 counts. I told you I might wait until early next week if the 9 counts form the divergences I've been talking about on the 60-minute chart, on the daily charts. Those divergences may not be done yet, as I've talked about. I told you it might spill over into next week, complete those divergences, end up seeing these 9 counts out. And I talked about these 9 counts, the 13 here on the S&P in the week that they were coming. I told you we hadn't finished those divergences, and they still may not be done. I'll likely be flipping the trade any day, and maybe Monday. My signals are still bullish. My signals, if we do see these signals play out, my signals would have to turn back to bearish to validate these 13 and 9 counts that I've been talking about. Watching today to see if an opportunity would present itself on the short trading session. Again, it looks like we still want to go a little bit higher. To me, these 9 counts got a good shot at being the high bar of the count on the S&P and the NASDAQ. Still monitoring this carefully to update you on that, because I told you I might close my long positions and flip to short positions this week, but I was monitoring the divergences very carefully. I told you I could just wait until my signals flip. Wanted to play the divergences, watching in the daily and the 60-minute time frame, and I think they're quite done yet. And I'm closing my long positions and going short, but still have not done so. Well, could at some point next week, especially with the 9 counts, possibly Monday. Big rally initially. Monday, I might try to do that Monday, but just monitoring the situation closely, because I want to lock in gains into the rally and then flip the trade to try to play some divergences. The divergences that I've been talking about on the daily and the hourly charts. But I do think these divergences could complete next week, and maybe even with the 9 counts on the NASDAQ 100 and S&P that will develop complete in all likelihood on Monday. I talked about these divergences, and we have the divergence right here that gave us this pullback. Didn't last long. We flipped right back to bullish momentum. The trend signals remained bullish, never turned bearish. And now I told you to be watching for these green bars. We got them. You have your multiple triple diversions. You have the same thing going on here with the MACD. This likely didn't complete on Thursday, but it could complete early next week. As I've talked about, you're likely going to see red bars here at some point in the very near future, and maybe by next week. Then I think we'll get a bearish reversal of conditions. We'll flip the bars back to red. We'll flip the cloud back to red. I think you'll start your pullback. I wouldn't be surprised if we got a doji or a topping tail or something like that on Monday, celebrating the passage of the big beautiful bill. And could it be a buy the rumor, sell the news event? I think for the NASDAQ overthrew the trend line. The S&P is now doing that, but there's divergences here on the MACD, the multiple point divergence, and on the awesome oscillator. I think we'll see that begin to play out. We'll get that possible 9 count on Monday, the NASDAQ and S&P daily charts. We'll be watching to see if these divergences can complete. So do we start a reversal that gives us that larger pullback? Now we're overthrowing the trend line from the previous highs, but we're up above that upper Bollinger Band. Again, I'll be watching for a close back below it. We got above it here, went sideways, popping back up here, holding above that upper Bollinger Band. Good chance when we start pushing back below it that we'll have a top. Very hard to hold above the upper band for very long. It's something I'm paying very close attention to. On Monday, do we get a 9 count that gives us a topping tail or a spinning top or a doji or something like that? Eventually pushes us right back below it. Back towards the cloud to test the 200 period moving average, the black line. NASDAQ daily chart, we dropped below the upper Bollinger Band, and now we're popping back above it. Again, I talked about that possibility. Oftentimes you'll drop below the upper band and then go back up to it or jump back above it. See a peak. As we're doing that, we're seeing a little divergence develop here. We still may go higher though. If we don't, the RSI go higher. When if we go higher, we get a topping tail come Monday and we see that 9 count complete. We did see the RSI move to an extreme here, but it's getting a little tiny divergence right here. End up completing. We'll see what happens. At larger divergence on the MACD, on the NASDAQ daily chart, I think you're still probably going to pop higher to complete the 9 count if we get a doji, a spinning top, or a topping tail, or something like that. I think we're about to finish these divergences. I've talked about the daily divergences. I think they're about to conclude. Over here in the 60-minute time frame, I'm looking at this MACD. It's turned back up. May not be quite done yet, but it looks like it's they're finished or about to finish. The RSI did push up here, and we've got this divergence going on. Might get still another push higher on Monday for the 9 counts to complete in the daily time frame. They end up being the high of the count. The 8 bar or the 9 bar has to be the high of the count for it to be a perfected signal. Have that 8 bar being the high of the count so far for the S&P. Maybe, though, that the 9 bar is the high of the count. We go a little bit higher. But I think that will conclude this wave 1, and then we'll get this ABC. These divergences and gave us pullbacks. But if you notice, sometimes they dragged out a little while. Again, this may not be done. What I've been talking about, these divergences that I'm watching for, they need a little bit more time on the MACD Monday. We had the divergence over here. It led to reversal. These other divergences led to pullbacks. Which will this be? It's still possible these divergences on the 60-minute chart are not quite complete. But we may see the divergences here and in the daily time frame complete by Monday. Certainly possible. And NASDAQ 100 was up 1% on Thursday, up 225 points. Again, gapping higher. This may not be done yet. It is pushing up. I was watching for these divergences to develop. Down here on the MACD, we're curling up at the center line, but it may not be quite done yet. The same is true for the daily time frame. Complete the 9 count in the daily time frame on NASDAQ and S&P. Still may go a little higher. I think that these divergences are about to complete, but they may not be done yet.